Hello and welcome to our next segment. We have already discussed 28 chapters. Now it is the turn of 29th. Luceta's life saved by Henchard. Now, after 3 or 4 days, Lucetta returns to Casterbridge. On the day of her return, while out of her house on a long walk, she is joined by Elizabeth, and both were taking a stroll. The two women are suddenly attacked by a bull, an enraged bull, and that was the time of the year when the cattle are taken from Casterbridge to far-flung places. So one of those cattle, a bull, he suddenly charged them, and his presence itself was quite enough to scare these two women. They run for safety into a nearby barn, but the bull chases them. So it's quite a terrible event. Just then, Henchard happens to be there, and who is just there by chance, and he notices the bull, and he comes to the rescue of these two women, Elizabeth and Lucetta. He grapples with the bull and saves both the women, especially Lucetta, who seemed to be a direct target of the bull's attack. And at the time, Lucetta was really terrified. In fact, anybody could be terrified. She then makes an offer of financial help to him in view of his losses. Henchard, however, would not accept money because he is a man of self-respect. And he suggests another way in which she can help him. She wants from her, in the presence of his chief creditor by the name of Mr. Gower, a promise that she will marry him. If she gives him this promise, Mr. Gower will not insist upon an immediate payment of a loan which Henchard owes to that man. Lucetta is known in the town to be a moneyed woman, a wealthy woman, and therefore her promise to marry Henchard would satisfy Mr. Gower. But here again is an irony of fate, and that is something that Lucetta is now going to reveal to Henchard. She expresses her helplessness to Henchard by saying that she cannot help Henchard. She informs him that she has already married Farfrae, and that marriage has in fact taken place in secret. The marriage actually took place at Port Brady, where she was for the last few days. In fact, that was the reason why she went to Port Brady. And Henchard feels furious. He is just stunned to learn about this marriage, and he says in his own words, "Oh, you false woman, you promised me." But he can't help it now, and he threatens to punish her for what she has done. And more, to add to the irony, the only witness of this marriage was none other than Mr. Gower himself. So it is again an irony, and it is another jolt to Henchard, who was still harboring some hope of reunion, but every hope is now dashed to pieces. Chapter number 30. Elizabeth's decision to leave Lucetta's house. Now, we need to remember that things have complicated a lot. Henchard wanted to marry the woman. The woman is already married in secret. Elizabeth Jane, who had feelings for the man Farfrae, he is married to Lucetta. So at least there are two characters, father and daughter, who are extremely unhappy about this incident of marriage. When Elizabeth learns about Lucetta's marriage to Farfrae, she feels very upset, quite naturally. She feels upset partly on her own account because she has been in love with this fellow, but she feels upset also because Lucetta has done something immoral. Because Lucetta, who was in love with Henchard, has now relinquished, has now abandoned Mr. Henchard, and she has found a better prospective man, that is Farfrae. In Elizabeth's opinion, Lucetta should have married the man to whom she had given a pledge of marriage, that is Henchard. Elizabeth now feels that she can no longer live in Lucetta's house. However, Lucetta had the plan of keeping keeping Elizabeth Jane with her and with them rather all of the three, and that is exactly what Lucetta tells Elizabeth Jane, that look, we are ready to stay together. But that is quite an insult to somebody like Elizabeth Jane, and she decides to leave this household as soon as possible, and she starts living separately. Chapter 31. Henchard is now a bankrupt. Things have turned so badly recently that Henchard is now a broke. The story narrated by the formative woman in the open court had quickly spread in small town Casterbridge like a wildfire, and obviously Michael Henchard has dipped in esteem in the eyes of others. The reaction of the people at large towards Henchard is very unfavorable, because they think that Michael Henchard has done or did in the past the most dishonorable thing. Now, this incident has come as a great blow to the reputation and position of Michael Henchard. He is financially ruined, and he is even socially he is a dishonored fellow, of course, for his own doings. With the loss of his good name, he now begins rapidly to fall in public esteem. His financial position has become critical, that he is compelled to declare his bankruptcy. He cannot conceal, he cannot hide his bankruptcy. His corn store, his hay barns, his house, his furniture, everything is now under the hammer. And it so happens that all his property and belongings are purchased by Farfrae. Another irony, another kind of dramatic patch to the vast canvas of this novel, that everything which was lost by Henchard is now bought by Farfrae. Henchard gives away his gold pocket watch and a canvas money bag, very costly ones, and it shows really that by this singular event of Michael Henchard, that he is an honest man. He could have easily kept these two items, but he didn't do that. He not only declared his bankruptcy, but also he deposited his pocket clock, and his money bag. Everybody then, praises the manner in which Henchard has honestly surrendered his last things, and having no home of his own, Henchard retires into the humble quarters of Job, the rural fellow who was working under Michael Henchard, the fellow whom he had appointed once, in fact. Elizabeth tries several times to meet Henchard in order to comfort him, as a girl, as a daughter, as a stepdaughter, but he refuses to meet her. 32. Henchard's house in Farfrae's possession. Now, soon after these events, Farfrae and Lucetta move into the house where Henchard previously used to dwell, which has been bought by Farfrae. Now, Farfrae, in contrast, is now a very wealthy man. Henchard's comment on receiving this information is that the man who has bought his house and furniture will surely one day buy his body and soul. But Farfrae is also a generous man. He is a kind-hearted man. He also makes an offer to Henchard. Henchard now decides to quit Casterbridge, but Farfrae, when he meets him again by chance, now somehow tries to convince him that look, he has a good offer, and Henchard should accept it. He is ready to give away his house, which once belonged to Henchard. But Henchard is surprised by this offer, and he does not accept it. And then Henchard is again back to his original business, that is agricultural labor. He is now a laborer once again. After some time, Henchard falls ill, and Elizabeth nurses him back to health, even though he had been avoiding her. Now he becomes a little kinder to Elizabeth, because things have dramatically worsened for him, and when he has fully recovered, he finds no way of earning his livelihood, because everything is gone. His barn is gone, his storehouses are gone, everything is gone. So what can he do to earn a living? Once a flourishing merchant, a prosperous man, an honorable man, is now ruined to almost nothing. So at the beginning of the winter, Henchard hears a rumor that soon Farfrae's name will be proposed for the office of mayor of Casterbridge. And Henchard again starts drinking once again, because he kept his promise all these years. 21 years have passed since Henchard has taken a vow not to touch liquor. The period for which he had taken the vow has ended, and he has started drinking once again. 33. Now, Henchard's, in the entire book, Henchard is a fine man, all right, but sometimes he's impetuous, sometimes he doesn't know what to say or how to act, and on the spur of the moment he makes many a mistake in the story. He now harbors a grudge against Farfrae, of course, for obvious reasons. At the Three Mariners Inn, where Henchard started drinking again, he openly declares his hostility to Farfrae. He says that if he so pleases, he can break Farfrae into two, just as he can break a stick. Again, a drinker. Elizabeth Jane, on hearing the news Henchard is drinking, enters the room where Henchard is talking in this irresponsible way. He tells her that he is a man of his word, and he keeps his word all the time. He kept his word of not drinking, and now when the time has elapsed, he is very much entitled to drink again. He also says that Farfrae had taken away everything from him he could have possibly done, and in his eyes Farfrae is nothing less than a villain. Elizabeth uses all her tact to take him away from the inn and leave him at his cottage. But Henchard, as we have seen right at the opening of the story, is sometimes he doesn't know. He's rash. He is very much rash. He is very much impetuous. But Lucetta appeals to Henchard. Lucetta, perhaps she still loves Henchard. One day Lucetta happens to see Henchard working in her husband's barns. Henchard speaks to her in a mocking fashion, and she feels greatly hurt. She goes away, but writes a note to him requesting him not to speak to her with bitterness if he happens to meet him again, because she loves her current husband, that is Farfrae. She informs him that he doesn't have any bad feeling, any hard feelings for him in her chest, and she is really happy that he has found his employment. And that is how the chapter ends. 34. Elizabeth now comes with an advice to Farfrae. Elizabeth finds an opportunity to meet Farfrae and to put him on his guard against any possible injury that Henchard might try to inflict upon him, because she knows her father. He is very much apprehensive that Michael Henchard could harm Farfrae. Now, Elizabeth's purpose, what is the purpose? Purpose in doing so is that Farfrae should take necessary precautions against this irresponsible and most enraged man in the neighborhood, that is Michael Henchard. But Henchard, still nurturing and nursing the grudge, on learning from Elizabeth that Henchard intends to harm him, Farfrae drops a certain proposal, which he had introduced in the town council for the rehabilitation of Henchard. When Henchard learns about this thing, his bitterness only enhances. Then a weapon in Henchard's hand. Henchard, of course, is now mad. He wants to take revenge, etc. Lucetta, meeting Henchard by chance one day, requests him to return to her the love letters which were bothering her, which she had once written to him. Of course, when they were passing very happy and warm days. But now Henchard had forgotten all about these things, these letters, etc. And he left them lying in the iron safe, a very safe custody, which had passed into Farfrae's possession along with the house, because the house now belongs to Farfrae, and therefore everything which is there in the house belongs to Farfrae. Lucetta's request for return of those letters now reminds Henchard of the terrible weapon he has got. Otherwise, he had completely forgotten about these letters. So Henchard now seeks Farfrae's permission to remove a certain packet from his old safe, the packet that contains letters. Farfrae has no objection whatsoever, and Henchard takes out the packet and then begins to read out to Farfrae the contents of those letters. His intention is to express and divulge the name of the writer at the very end. In the adjacent room sits Lucetta in a state of terrible panic. She is nervous, and Farfrae is going to be, because after all, it's a matter of reputation for both Farfrae and Lucetta. After reading out some of the love letters, however, Henchard goes home without disclosing the name of the writer. He has found that he cannot do such a cruel thing as to destroy domestic happiness of his former sweetheart and Farfrae. So that is how the chapter ends. Henchard is back to his senses, and he spares the household, the newly wedded household. 35. Lucetta's humble entreaty and humble request to Henchard. Lucetta certainly doesn't want those love letters to be, to fall into the hands of Farfrae. Lucetta again meets Henchard because the love letters are weighing upon her mind. He had not disclosed the name, but she can any moment. And knowing what Henchard might do on some other occasion, now she requests him not to destroy the happiness of, and therefore put those letters aside. This is what she says to Henchard on this occasion, the exact words. I have no other grief. My happiness would be secure enough, but for your threats. Oh, Michael, don't wreck me like this. When I came here, I was a young woman. Now I am rapidly becoming an old one. So, Henchard, for the sake of my old days, for the sake of the love that we exchanged between ourselves, you must not destroy me or my husband. Henchard, again, a kind-hearted man, his heart is filled with pity on hearing the appeal from such a sweet woman. He gives her a promise that he will return letters, but at the same time he tells her that one day Farfrae is sure to find out the secret, because secret cannot remain buried forever. Lucetta says that she will prove herself to be a devoted wife to Farfrae, that he will forgive her for her past life when he comes to know about it. And that is how the things are at least temporarily settled between Lucetta and Henchard. Now, a scimity ride. What is a scimity ride? Scimity ride is a public display of an effigy of a man whom people want to dishonor or disgrace. Henchard hands over the packet of Lucetta's letters to a fellow Job and asks him to deliver it to Lucetta. He doesn't understand how serious things could really be. Job has an inquisitive mind. He has a crooked mind, all right. Besides, he has a certain grudge against Lucetta as well as against Henchard. Now, having a vague suspicion in his mind, he is now starting sniffing things. He opens the packet and finds love letters written by whom? Written by Henchard to Lucetta. Written by Lucetta to Henchard. Of course, these letters are very old, but they are love letters, and any love letter can have serious repercussions at one point or the other later on some time. Now, having come into the possession of such precious secret, he cannot resist the temptation to read out some of the letters. And Job, as we know that there are some villainous traits in his mind. So he finds himself up to something, so up to some mischief, of course, and he gathers people. He doesn't resist to read the letters in gathering of bad characters at the inn called Peter's Finger, situated in Mixen Lane. Now, these fellows, the country fellows, bad characters who don't have that kind of depth of character as Farfrae or Henchard, what do? They decide to take out a skimmity ride. Skimmity, Skimmity, skimmity ride, which will expose the past relationship between Henchard and Lucetta in public eye. And their objective is to disgrace these two characters, especially Lucetta, and to just draw some fun out of it, without realizing that such rides could be really not detrimental, but very, very fatal to somebody's character or to somebody's life. But rural people sometimes lack such sensitivity. Now here, let me say something, that the skimmity ride, which proves to be very, very decisive in the story. Skimmity rides were not quite rare in Dorset, because in that part of the country, Wessex, skimmity rides were there. Thomas Hardy read about them. Thomas Hardy really knew about such skimmity rides from different sources. So they organized such a ride. We call this skimmity ride, and it has some effects later on. We'll see. Chapter 37. A visit of royal personage. Now, this incident actually happened in England. It was perhaps Prince Albert who paid a visit to the southwestern part of England, a royal personage, and he happens to visit this place, Casterbridge. Henchard wishes to walk with the members of the city corporation in order to receive the special guest, the guest of honor. But his wish to do is just disappointed because neither Farfrae nor other members really approve of Henchard's presence, because Henchard is a broke. He's ill-reputed man. Nobody likes Henchard. Of course, he was the mayor of Casterbridge once upon a time, but today he is just nobody. But Henchard on this occasion behaves again in a rash way, and he makes up his mind to greet the royal visitor in his personal capacity as an ex-mayor. But Farfrae doesn't like it. When the royal carriage enters the city, Henchard advances to greet the royal personage in defiance of the regulations. So that is quite unacceptable. Now, the whole honor and the prestige of the town witnesses Henchard advancing with the Union Jack fluttering in his hand. However, Farfrae, who is now the mayor, quickly moves forward and pushes Henchard to a side, and thus making it impossible for him to just to fulfill his mission. The solemnity of the occasion does not permit Henchard to put up any resistance, because he also shies away, and he withdraws from the scene in a sullen mood. But the incident has increased Henchard's hatred for Farfrae. So this incident only deepens the hatred, the enmity in the heart of Henchard for Farfrae. And that's it for this segment. There should be one more segment to finish this entire book, which shall be done in the following installment. Thank you.